Hey everybody, so welcome back to Jim Bob's Garden. So today we're going to talk about volunteers. Like my kid behind the camera has volunteered to come out and take a video of me. Well, I kind of volunteered her. But like we have a volunteer military. We have volunteer fire departments. But in the garden, a volunteer is a completely different thing. Like I want you to take a look down in here and you'll see like this right here. This is marigold. That marigold, I didn't plant it there. It basically, a seed flew here or landed here, what have you, and it basically volunteered. It came up. So it's essentially a weed, all right, because it's not something I planted there, not necessarily something I wanted there, but now it has decided to grow there anyway, and it's a volunteer. Another one is this one right here. This is a purple amaranth, which are very tasty in salads, and so I'm going to let it grow, which is what I think these are. I'm not really sure, but all of these tomatoes here, all of those, some over there, those four right there in the middle, this one here, they're all volunteers. And so what happens is with me, I compost just about everything. Sometimes we have tomatoes go bad or they just never really made it on the vine, so I'll throw them in the compost. And sometimes the compost gets hot enough to kill it, but other times it doesn't. And so then you end up with tomato seeds in your compost and they end up growing. Same thing here. I believe this and this are peppers. Volunteer again, just volunteer peppers. Now, are volunteers a good thing? Well, I will tell you, some of the best tomatoes I've ever grown were compost tomatoes. Volunteer tomatoes that came up out of my compost. So I'm going to take some of these out and I'm going to plant them elsewhere in my garden. But I will show you, not only do I have peppers and tomatoes, but if you look right here, that is a potato. More than likely from a potato peeling, but that's another volunteer. I'm going to let it grow there, and if it grows potatoes, great. If it doesn't, it'll make more compost. So that's what volunteers are. Should you let them grow? Well, that's kind of up to you. I mean, some of these tomatoes are in places like this one here is going to interfere with those there. So I'll take these out and I'll put them somewhere else in the garden. This amaranth will probably be okay, but there's other things in here like this marigold is okay here, but I pulled a whole bunch of others out because they were in places, because marigolds can get really large, but they were in places where they would not necessarily add to the garden, and so I went ahead and pulled them out. I left a few though because they're good as a deterrent for other pests. So should you allow your volunteers to grow? That's entirely up to you. It's kind of like weeds. Many of the weeds that you look around and see, like this weed right here, for example, is a completely edible weed. Dandelions, completely edible. Dollarweed, completely edible. Does that make them less of a weed? No, they're still weeds. But they volunteer to grow in certain places, and if you don't mind them growing there, maybe consider leaving them. Alright, so you will get volunteers in your garden, particularly if you use a lot of compost like I do. It's not a bad thing. And in fact, like I said, sometimes it seems to me like they grow better than the actual plants that you plant. Alright, so that's what I got going on. That's what volunteers are. You'll probably find some in your garden as you go along. Keep them or not, that's up to you. Alright, thanks once again for stopping by. Do me a favor, give me a like and a subscribe, and let me know what you think. But most importantly, grow some, even if it's only volunteers.